Okay, greetings and welcome to another Grenfell MediaWatch update. Today's edition I want to call just one more thing. And I want to start the news with a report from the EHRC, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, who after a 15-month investigation have found that the Council and Central Government have been in breach of Article 2 of the Human Rights Convention, that's the European Convention on Human Rights, about the right to life. And in their hard-hitting report following Grenfell, the Commission found that the Council failed not only in its failure to protect residents from the fire, but in their aftercare, especially when it comes to children, who they abysmally failed. The only problem with this finding is with Britain about to leave the EU following the Brexit vote, it escapes the jurisdiction of the European Courts of Human Rights, and that's pretty much what a lot of very wealthy people want to happen. I mean, one thing we do know is that Kensington and Chelsea Council has actually allocated £50 million over 5 years for a Grenfell recovery programme. Now this would normally be fantastic news if we hadn't just found out that the same council has just given its top executives a combined 90k bonus, and I'm presuming that's performance related. It's quite dodgy, isn't it? Anyway, the council and the local government a couple of days ago just released a letter saying that they've actually employed an independent investigator, surveyor, to check out the soil qualities in the area. And this is after, I think it's Professor Steck's investigation. It's taken a long time. But of course, if the investigation's been carried out by someone who's been appointed by the government and by the council, how independent can it really be? Now, there have been some other developments when it comes to the issue of justice. The media's reported that the police investigation probably won't submit its findings until 2021. Now, the police have explained this is because its investigation is tied to the timetable of the public inquiry. Now, a month ago there was a community consultation which I attended, and it was actually very informative. The officer in charge of investigation made it clear that they're pursuing several potential charges. There's gross negligent manslaughter, corporate manslaughter, health and safety, and misconduct in public office. Now that last one's quite interesting because that's the first time I actually heard that being put into the public domain. Misconduct in public office means councillors, politicians in particular, MPs. But I must confess, just having those options on the table makes things a little bit more interesting. I mean, this weekend I listened to the Radio 4 podcast, Seriously, depicting what happened on the 40th floor that night, and it was distressing. Distressing again to hear that. It makes me smile when I see The Guardian put on its front page of its website a Carla's comment about Grenfell and what justice means. And let's be clear, justice does mean those responsible going to jail. You see, if we're to believe that the law applies to everyone, that is, lawbreakers and lawmakers, then justice cannot be deferred or absolved by pulling out a checkbook and paying someone off. Now, over the last month, there's been a lot of reports in the newspaper about campaigning, most of it about cladding on private accommodation. There's a group that's challenging the £70,000 bill they've been handed to make their homes safe. There's also a group in luxury apartments that is suing their landlord for actually refusing or taking such a long time to remove the cladding. But of course, it's not just cladding. Other campaigners are looking at fire sprinklers. As it stands right now, only buildings over 30 metres have to have fire sprinklers installed inside them. And what campaigners are saying, well, actually, that's too high. I mean, I heard recently about a family where a young child perished in a 2-storey house. So what they're saying is actually, instead of the minimum height being 30 metres, it should be 18 metres. So that's cutting it down from 10 floors to around 4 or 5 floors. But of course, not all campaigners are public spirited. We have self-serving people like Mark Littlewood, who campaigns that the Grenfell inquiry should not stop private inspections. A lot of people make money from those outsourcing of mandatory duties to people who do it on the cheap. Anyway, change, good or bad, whether it's repeated in the media or not, is slowly coming. Like I said, I was listening to that Radio 4 programme, and one of the things that came out of that was that the London Fire Brigade, even though they're saying that they won't talk about what happened until their investigation is concluded, the police investigation is concluded, and the public inquiry is concluded, they have said that what they're doing is, or what they have done, is purchase some hoods that they can use over people who are trapped in burning buildings to bring them safely down the stairs. But what they didn't say in that radio podcast was that they've ordered some, or what I've heard in some media reports, they've actually ordered some aerial platforms. Because let's be clear about this. In one of the wealthiest cities in the world, it's quite outrageous that the London Fire Brigade did not have sufficient equipment and that was tall enough to reach those people on those higher floors. And that clearly was a contributing factor into the deaths of many people. Anyway, as usual, let me give you an update on the rehousing situation. Right now, as it stands, out of the 202 families that were directly affected, I think around 182 are now in permanent housing. Slowly getting there. The only problem is, of course, if you add the figures of the walkways, that means there's over 60 people still living in temporary accommodation. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But before I close, do you remember when we first started these updates and I spoke about us all being part of a Grenfell generation? Those of us who are involved in keeping the topic alive, supporting those who are affected, making sure that the path to justice doesn't go on for decades and decades and decades. Well, there is one good news story, and that's of a university who's making sure that its students who engage in a course on criminology watch a film about Grenfell and ask questions that enables them to frame such incidents that could have been avoidable in the context of social murder. Now that course is going to see some 10,000 students over its lifetime. And those 10,000 hopefully will be a positive catalyst for change in the future. So I'm going to close as ever on this beautiful spring morning. And I'm going to say, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.